This is the Level Up Engineering Podcast, where we talk with some of the most successful engineering leaders who reveal actionable management insights that help you take your developer team to the next level. This episode is brought to you by Coding Sans, a software development agency building web applications from design to delivery with React, Node.js, and Angular. Check them out at codingsans.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Level Up Engineering Podcast. I am Karolina Tóth, and I am here with our guest today, Anand Safi. He's joining me from Mark 43. And before we jump into today's topic, I would like to have him introduce himself. I know he is employed as a senior engineering manager, but what are his passions? What are his projects? Please let us know a bit more about you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Carolina. I am Anand Safi. I currently am a senior engineering manager at Mark 43. I lead the mobile engineering teams here. And just a little bit about me is over the past, I would say, 12 years, I've progressed from starting as a SDET, as an automation engineer, to kind of now leading engineering teams. So it has been a great journey working across the SDLC stack. I also actually did part of my schooling in India. Then I did my master's in the US and worked there for a decade. And then over the past 2.5 years, I am currently in Canada, in Montreal. So I've kind of lived, worked, or just experienced three different countries and cultures, which is immensely valuable and just helps me kind of just keep my mind open to new experiences and perspectives. Just to end that, I do a lot of kind of community engagement in form of either mentorship on various platforms, startup advisory for 3 pre-seed startups currently, and then I'm also a volunteer board member for 2 nonprofits. Me and my wife have a big passion for food blogging, or like our foodies, what kind of most people are, but our little food blog has over 85,000 followers on Instagram, and I love exploring kind of new places for culinary delights and cocktails. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, a bit of engineering, a bit of leadership, and then a bit of kind of food influencing on the side.
I love that. Thank you so much. It sounds like a multicultural, eventful life that you're leading. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us. And without further ado, let's jump into today's topic, which is how to build trust in remote teams. We talked about this before the recording. This is a topic that might be a little out of reach for some engineering leaders who are the main listeners of the show. So let's just start by defining our topic. In your opinion, please tell us what trust in the workplace means. Yeah,
and I thank you for saying in my opinion, because this is a question I ask myself every day while working with my team members. This is not one of those conversations where I'm an expert or I've lived through kind of the success criteria. It's an evolving kind of concept as we navigate the times currently. So for me currently, trust in workplace, or my definition, is that it's an abstract item to comprehend, and it's very kind of individual driven. In the end, if I had to put it in one sentence, I think it's kind of the level of reliability and credibility you see in another individual or organization, right? So it's basically how much you feel that whatever you're hearing or experiencing is reliable and credible. In that sense, it might or might not always be tied to, I would say, experiences. You could join a new company or team, and within the first week, you either start trusting too much or you always trust too little, actually. So there's also a little bit of this preconceived notion or kind of just mindset that you derive, whether you are open to giving kind of people in situations the benefit of the doubt, or you would rather kind of just trust from the get-go and always see the bright side of kind of any experience, actually. So it's abstract, and then it also kind of in the end relates to how credible or reliable you see the individual or the information that you're presented with.
Right. I love that. because it also tells us how it might be important. I think I read from Stephen Covey maybe that when trust is up, then cost is low usually, and decisions can be made faster, and when trust is low, then the cost is high and decisions take usually more time because people need to feel out for each other. So what you said, it gives a business reality to the topic and as to why we are talking about it. Let's jump into a little about our current situation. We've been in the pandemic going on 3 years. What's the difference, in your opinion, between building trust in a remote team and then in an office environment?
Yeah, I think just at least in my opinion, I think the future, as far as I can see or predict, is definitely going to be a combination of remote and hybrid, actually. That's where I see most teams going. So I think it is very critical now to get our best practices or thoughts in order for remote kind of culture first, since it's, I think, a little bit harder there than in person. I would say the advantages in the office environment are really just go up to someone's desk, actually, just meet them in the hallway, meet them in the kitchen, or just kind of go for a coffee walk, or are within the room with the same persons, right? So there's a lot that can be said and felt from a body language or just kind of interpersonal like interaction in person that has huge advantage in terms of just overcoming, I would say, any miscommunication or any kind of second guessing that might come up, actually. The challenge in office environment that I see is because people, or I also got too comfortable with the office environment setting, it became twice more difficult to build that in a remote environment. And that's why it was just kind of really easy that, oh, I will just tackle this when I see you. Or people always held that notion that the only way to kind of build trust or really kind of overcome a hurdle was to have an in-person conversation. Like, why don't you come next week and then we'll sort that out in person, or we'll go over that once you're here. That thing is fading now over the past 12 to 15 months, actually, but that was a challenge in the office environment back then, actually, which I felt. Another thing that I felt was that in office, it was not always possible that you did a one-on-one with every single person. There's also a lot of kind of group and social interactions, actually, at times. While in a remote environment, there is actually a possibility that if you really make the effort or genuinely have an interest, you can do these one-on-ones kind of more frequently or just connect with people for 15, 20 minutes, actually. I don't remember in office where my days were just meeting with all members of my team 20 to 30 minutes a day, or otherwise I'll just be in a conference room all day and then I'll meet one person after the other, right? It's more kind of ad hoc and just more casual conversations. But here there's scheduled time, 30 minutes with the person, so you're genuinely kind of forming a connection and kind of going over that. So I think the advantage in the remote culture is there is definitely an opportunity for us to form a sustainable culture of communication if we crack that correctly. There is less upkeep or monitoring from leadership to facilitate conversations, right? Once people have found that kind of rhythm, I don't need to kind of currently in my teams see if whether the front end or the back end engineer are connecting or the product manager is getting the answer they need from a staff engineer on a technical feasibility thing. Those connections are simply happening now as people get more comfortable. Another thing I will say, one huge thing that we don't realize is in the office environment, people still had personal lives, right? The school pickup or just staying home to take care of a loved one or not feeling great. So that was always some form of time boundary, actually, that, oh, I just got free at 4 p.m., but the person I wanted to talk to just kind of left at 3:30 because they had something. In the remote environment, all of that goes away. You have the flexibility of time, actually. Depending on the working hours or overlap hours, you can find the time to connect, or there is more kind of genuine investment in that regard, actually. The challenge that I'll end kind of my explanation with the remote environment is it's difficult to showcase and practice inclusive leadership that I experience actually, that I can connect a lot with people individually, but in a group, how do I make sure that I am kind of just getting everyone's opinions heard, or just kind of, I think it was a little bit easier for me to do that in person in a conference room actually, but here the amount of interrupts or how to kind of let everyone have their voice in a remote environment is a little bit tricky. We don't want to just use this raise a hand feature all day or just kind of call on people in those things actually. And then I would say misunderstandings a little bit more likelier to arise in this remote first medium because I'm currently in my home environment, right? Maybe I just had kind of not a great personal moment out there, or I just learned that somebody in my family is not feeling well. So I might have mixed facial expressions, or just kind of on a Zoom meeting or a call talking with you, I might have other things going on. So there's a tiny bit chance that we are open to kind of misinterpretation based on what people are kind of going through in their personal lives, or just kind of because the work and personal life are so much intertwined actually. And then one really important point that I'll say is it's also easy for us to kind of in human nature to second guess somebody's kind of commitment to discipline or time management. If I am, say, 5 minutes late to our call today, I would be okay thinking, oh, because I was talking to my parents, or because I was doing a chore, that was the case actually. But if a coworker does that, after a certain point in time, if we see that behavior, like we might kind of start guessing, okay, are they lazy? Do they don't respect somebody's time? But it's difficult to understand and truly respect that everyone has kind of personal lives actually, and we might think that they're not holding up their end of the bargain in a remote first environment actually. So I think it's just the open-ended interpretation that's a little bit challenging, but there's a huge value of collaboration and flexibility if we kind of do this right and can keep and sustain it actually in a remote environment.
When you were talking about what facial expressions you might use because you had just gotten some unfortunate news or anything like that, I immediately thought, isn't that the point of trust though? So if we were in such a situation, I would hope that you would feel comfortable enough with me to say, I just had some really bad news delivered. Or if I saw that your facial expressions were kind of mixed or maybe not accurate to the situation, I would hope that I would be comfortable enough with you or trusting you enough to say, look, Anand, I see that you a little bit act like you're all over the place. Is everything all right? And in this sense, I feel trust becomes even more important in a remote setting.
Yeah, 100%. So that's why it's beautiful you bring up this point, because it is both a challenge and can quickly become an advantage, right? The hard part of trust is building it and then kind of repairing broken trust. The part that once the trust is established, that has huge rewards actually. So one article by BBC actually stated that there are two types of trusting personalities. One is automatic personalities, which I was saying, and then the second is evidence-based actually. For the people who are automatically trusting, like love the company culture or connect from the get-go, they would always kind of, as you said, right, the facial expression, the first thing they will kind of just pause and say, are you okay? Like, are you going through something? We can always connect another time, or let's take it offline. Take the time you need. The evidence-based folks actually, who are still trying to figure out how much their peers and kind of coworkers trust them, or they're still kind of finding their place in kind of the company, which are new to the team, they might find it twice more difficult in these situations where somebody is either not paying enough attention to them or are kind of less invested in what they have to say. So there is a minor chance where that kind of just even sets them back even further while they were building trust. So that's what I was trying to get at, that what you said is it can be a huge advantage once it's there from a sustainable culture standpoint, actually, and you will get all the support and love you need from your colleagues and coworkers, because we spend 50 to 75% of the time we are awake with these folks in various forums, like on calls or Slack or emails or various kind of methods. So that is important. But while you are establishing trust or kind of just new to a team or environment, that kind of, I would say, environment can just be a little confusing, actually, in that regards.
Thank you for elaborating on that. I am under the impression that you joined Mark 43 while the pandemic was going on. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
So if you could share, you mentioned hybrid environment. I don't know if you are working in a hybrid environment right now, but if you could share maybe some stories as to how you built trust when you joined in the pandemic, I think that might help us get a better grasp.
Right. So I have been currently in a fully remote environment. I currently live 6.5, 7 hours from my closest company office in Toronto, but I've not had a chance to go yet because of the various kind of different waves and office closures, actually. So my experience over the last 13 months with Mark 43 and the team has been directly related to building trust in a remote team, actually. And my experience or story is a little bit more, I would say, interesting, because there were multiple levels of challenges or opportunities, however we look at with this role. It's not only a new role that I took upon and joined a new team. What I took on was a new division or concept to the company itself. So I had two levels of, I would say, hurdles to get across. First is establishing kind of my place and trust with my peers and learning the organization culture. But at the same time, the division that I took on was just 6 months into its inception. So I also had to advocate and make a place for the division itself, actually. So just to give some background, when I joined Mark 43, we had just started our mobile division, which was kind of just one engineer building the MVP version, one designer, one product manager, and then one engineer helping us with the backend. There was a void in terms of the engineering leadership part. So I was presented with the option that this is something new that we want to invest in as a company over the next few years. Would you like to take upon this opportunity? And I had always been a strong web development or website individual contributor or led teams doing web engineering. So I took upon myself to take upon a mobile division, not knowing mobile technologies firsthand as good as the other web technologies. I was up to the challenge to make a place for mobility as a concept at Mark 43 to determine the org strategy for us as a company, and at the same time establish trust with this new team and kind of my direct reports since I was a new leader, right? The first thing was, is too much going to change? Does Anand get it, what we're trying to do here? So my initial months were really immersed in building the trust with my team members one-on-one. And I don't simply mean my engineering direct reports, right? The product and design counterparts as well. If you think of the three pillars as PDE for like product design engineering for any kind of division to succeed, it was equally or probably at times more important for me that myself, my product lead, and my design lead were in sync, and then I could go back to my engineering counterparts, actually. So that is why I focused a lot on just relationship building in the first 3 months, actually, and it was more so like in terms of just asking them questions in terms of what are you struggling with or what is kind of our current situation. It is like peeling an onion, right? Like layers after layers. So they might almost feel like I was interrogating them after a certain point. But I wanted to showcase that I genuinely care and believe in the success of this kind of division, and I see the vision on what we can achieve. That's why I took this up, actually. and at the same time showcasing vulnerability and kind of genuineness that I have been in the spot that they are as an engineer, where there is a little bit less direction from the leadership, because that connective tissue, like somebody like myself was missing, that is the frontline middle management to get the message across actually. So I said, like, it's not going to happen overnight, but let's kind of make sure that we are all aligned internally, so I can advocate for us and our kind of where we see this going to the leadership. That progressed wonderfully over the past year, and we grew from that one engineer, one PM, one designer to currently a team of 12. I have 7 engineers and 2 designers, 1 product lead, and a product consultant. So we grew from 4 people to 12 people over the year. I was able to do that actually because I trust my teams and kind of their investment actually, right? I told someone just last week, what still keeps me going with this division is because the people who were with this division 18 months ago when they started are still here actually. Even though they have had a lot of misdirection or peaks and valleys of morale actually, or maybe a couple of times employee retention problems, they have been here to thick and thin. And for someone who even joined them 6 months later, I trust that them so much that if they see the value, I want to do even more for my team actually. That was just wonderful, and that just kind of helps me advocate because our division is small, right? Our other product divisions are 30, 40 plus people big. Mine is 30% of any other product division. So for me to advocate in terms of budgeting or resourcing or what should be our priorities, this trust factor that we are a tight-knit group and we achieve whatever we commit to really helps me kind of take that case across to executive management and see that if you put time and effort in this group, we are delivering everything of value.
It sounds like you worked a lot, and it also sounds like excuse me, it also sounds like we are starting to pick trust apart to maybe some things that you mentioned. You mentioned showing vulnerability and building relationships, and I, without saying the word, I think you said building transparency and showing your work to management. What else is there within trust, or better yet, how are some other ways of building it?
Yeah, I would say one way to build it is not to break it, actually. It can sound very cheeky, but just you don't, I'll like, to be really candid, right? I would not want to promise one thing to one of my direct reports in a one-on-one and go do something completely opposite in the team weekly meeting 3 days later, or say something completely opposite to my own manager who's the VP of engineering, right? So just making sure that you are, I would say, genuine with your verbal commitments actually, right? That goes a long way. Some things are really important. The other thing I would say is also, I'm saying a lot of transparency or just kind of be open and honest to everyone. The other thing is, I have realized is, while building these relationships, just try to gauge the level of comfort for folks actually. There is always a saying that we hear much in our tech leadership industry, Carolina, that praise in public, criticize in private. And over times, I've had a couple of really senior engineers come to me and say, we actually don't even like the praise in public. There are some people who just always want to be behind the scenes and just kind of do their craft and kind of see the team succeed rather than being called upon in all hands meetings and just all these public kudos and everything. So there is also a personality type on being outspoken or kind of extrovert versus shy and introvert actually. So I want to make sure, like, I am saying, like, in a one-on-one that you did good, that's great, but then I don't want that engineer or direct report to feel surprised if I announce it to 400 people in our all hands later in the afternoon, actually, and we did not talk that, I think you did good, I'm going to highlight to the team and the company. So that thing is a little trust factor that I have come to realize, where people in one-on-ones come to me and say, thank you for that, but I wish I would have known earlier, like as a heads up. I was actually out there picking up something from the pharmacy or something, and I was in the car when my name got called in front of her. So it can sound kind of very casual, but these things matter for people, right? So no surprises is kind of the point that I'm getting at, good or constructive in any sense in this trusting relationship, actually.
And I also hear building trust in very consecutive steps. It sounds like if you're mindful of your communications, it's going to help you in building trust with your team. As you mentioned, just pointing it out to someone that you will mention them to the entire team might make it a lot less perhaps stressful event in their lives.
Correct. And this is the reality, right? I invested a lot in my team and relationships over the past year, but now we are growing. Like since we grew 300 to 400%, the same processes did not scale well. I might not be able to give everyone that amount of time. Today, I am managing some of these folks directly, like managing ICs. Tomorrow, I might be managing them through others, like manager of managers, career progression, or kind of just growing into role, or somebody will grow into my role. So that trust is that kind of preserving aspect that will still help us function, whether or not I have direct face time. It does not mean that they always need to come to me or and conversation needs to happen. They know how I am as a person, what I kind of believe in, the values I stand for. Values is the new thing that I just introduced actually. So just values that I stand for or they stand for, and they would be okay to function or be productive with or without kind of me being there or myself becoming a bottleneck in the long run actually.
I love that. So we have talked about a lot of things. What are some of the concrete tips that you can, if someone is listening to us and they are wondering, okay, I need to be mindful of my communications, I need to be very transparent as to what we are doing or what I am doing. What else can you suggest to leaders that they should do to have a higher trusting environment? Or better yet, I'm sorry if I'm rambling, but how can they gauge what the trust is in their environment just now?
Got it. So how is this more around how do we measure, or first how do we establish, and if we feel we have established, how do we measure that we are kind of just having a good trusting environment?
Right, sure.
Got it. So I think in order to establish trust, it is at multiple levels, right? Say at the individual level, I think one-on-ones is just what I said or what I've read most about. I think that is the most, I would say, safe space with psychological safety both ways for folks to just be open and transparent. Actually, at the team level, it is bit of professional and then a bit of kind of casual, where you do have weekly sync. So we do kind of weekly syncs just in terms of establishing trust that everyone is committed to kind of the goals of the week. They show up, they are giving updates or like daily stand-ups, those form. So any kind of agile ritual and process where people are taking part just shows that you are establishing trust actually. And especially it's not, when I say that these agile rituals and process are updates where people come and say, okay, I'm working on this, I'll get back once I'm done, thank you, bye, I'm going. It's like, I'm working on this, I think I have done this much, but I'm really struggling with this part. I am now more than happy to hear about any kind of ideas, or I would love someone to just look this with me or just eyeball it or just give a second kind of look together. That is the trust factor, right? That people can really be senior or opinionated or just kind of expert, but the one or time that they really struggle or they are kind of just facing a roadblock, they are not shy to ask for help or support actually, right? That is the trust in that agile ritual or process part, that we are truly thinking, as they say, like the ship shipmate and myself kind of mindset, that I'm thinking about the team, then my colleagues, and then myself for my own self-interest, that I really want to hold this piece of code base dear or this thing dear because it's complex, and I would be the go-to subject matter expertise, and that's how people will always need to come to me. I don't see that, fortunately, in any of the teams or folks I work with at my company, so that is a huge trust from an organizational or team culture standpoint, actually. The other way I would think at the organizational level is definitely transparency around communication. Uh, uh, there is a thin line that now that I am progressing in my leadership career, as an engineer, I always felt I wish they had told us, like, why not did they tell? Like, what is the problem that leaders cannot tell each and everything that is going on? But now that I'm sitting in some of these conversations, I realize how much influx or fluid these conversations or decisions are as new information comes, as kind of the strategic landscape changes, as our competitive intel or just kind of market positioning changes. So you would rather go to your kind of folks with something concrete and directional rather than something fuzzy that you say, this is it, and then you come back 5 days later. So that is what I'm working with my team on coaching, that I've seen the other side actually, and my job is to make sure that I know something like this is being worked on, or we are figuring out a strategy. Just be patient. We will roll this out by this timeline. And once we have some direction, then we as a group can focus or suggest the execution piece. So I think that just is great because I built those individual kind of trust in the one-on-ones. Because we did these group discussions at the team, then the organizational trust becomes easy and everything kind of comes together beautifully in that regards, actually.
I love that. So even because we are talking, I love nuances. The world seems to forget nuances a lot of the times. But we mentioned, building a transparent kind of relationship in which trust can blossom. But then also as a leader, you have to be mindful of the transparency, not to put, for example, more stress on someone than they actually need to handle. And I love how you put it. You made it sound like you still have to be transparent about the process. Like, we are tackling this problem. It's not forgotten, but we haven't gotten the kind of straightforward answer yet. So be patient with us as we figure out the next steps. And I think that kind of feeling like you are in the loop makes people trust their leaders more.
Yeah, because whatever they are experiencing, I'm also experiencing, right? Like, I am in 50% of the conversations, then there's board meetings, there's executive meetings that might happen at the C-suite level, and I understand how many competing priorities are just kind of things that we might tackle. So I would rather feel that I'm being heard and this is an item on their agenda versus, okay, this just sounds kind of irrelevant to us, or it might be a big thing in your world, but where we sit at this 30,000 feet view, it doesn't matter. That I don't see kind of in my teams or culture, and that is a huge trusting factor. I know that they'll get there in due time. Actually, it's just that it might take a little bit more time because there's just other kind of bigger org-wide initiatives that is being worked on. So there's definitely that kind of prioritization or ruthless prioritization, as some might say, that is kind of a factor. So the more trust and clarity I have in my executive leadership, the more I can work with my team and peers to form that trust among us, and they can feel kind of comfortable as well.
I love that. If you mentioned coaching the individuals on the team, this is the scenario that just popped into my head, and I'm trying to give as much value to our listeners as possible. How do you help the team members have the trust in each other if they perhaps don't have it and they confide in you and say, in so many words, they say, I don't trust my teammate to finish this task or to help me with my project. What are some of the tips that come to your mind to help individuals trust each other more?
Yeah, I love this question because a lot of what we might think is best practices, but this is the real deal what you just asked, right? I still go through this fairly often, more often than I would like actually, as the more senior, or I would say the more kind of tenured engineers I end up kind of having in my team or leading, where everyone wants the best for the team and direction, but they all have different approaches actually, or just kind of one opinion might be dear versus the other, right? Somebody might think that this can give us short-term success. Somebody might always be safeguarding for every single edge case, or might be over engineering it to an extent actually in order to make something always future proof. So the one thing I have realized is and you can kind of correct me in your experience as well, right? One thing that I've not done till yet is I have not gotten, say there are two individuals who are facing this problem. I have not had a three-way call where I am inviting them both to a single call and saying that let the three of us all together. I have not done that, to be honest. What I've done is I've talked to both of them individually in my one-on-ones actually, and just said that I leave this to you folks, hoping that at least one of them kind of gets the message that I'm trying to convey and reaches out to the other folks. And that has happened, right? I brought these two people to connect directly. Even I might kind of be a frontline middle management, but there's some form of executive presence if I'm in the call with them because they both report to me actually, and they might not be as authentic or just speak their minds in a three-way conversation versus they would in kind of just them both dealing with each other actually to bring their points across actually. So something that I'm doing, and this is more that I see on technical discussions. It's not a personal thing. Like it's not that I don't like you or you're not a good person or those things. People, I see that they genuinely kind of respect each other's work and craft. It goes back to my definition of trust, right? They know that these folks are reliable and credible because they have been in the industry for say 5, 7, 10 years. They have done work. They are in the team. They're the peer at the same level. But then there's something called a trust equation that was put out. And what I said, like credible and reliable, is the numerator. The denominator of the trust equation, which I left out conveniently, but what it meant is the amount of trust depends on what you see the other person is trying to do in their own self-interest. And that self-interest is where most of this miscommunication happens, where a senior engineer might feel that this other person is trying to push their agenda out, or just because they believe in this concept for their own good, right? Whether it's kind of career progression or just trying to be a subject matter expert, or just because they really believe in this school of thought, they are trying to push their own personal agenda to an extent. And that is where most conflicts arise in that regards, that I don't believe we need to do this to an extent. If you feel the need for it, just go ahead and do it, but I'm not going to participate in this activity because you feel we need to do this as a team. This whole self-interest bubble is kind of what causes confusion. And I've had to deal with situations over the past year in terms of trying to bring them to the values that I see that you are both genuinely invested in making our product high quality and high touch UX for our customers that can scale well. Your approaches are different, right? The magnitude of what you believe can help us get there is different. So it's not that you want different things or you are saying that we should not do this versus the other. You're saying to what extent should we commit to now versus in future. And that is what I work at the individual level. And over time, one realizes versus the other that actually they probably just did not have a strong opinion themselves, but just because somebody had a stronger opinion and was trying to really push this onto the team, it irked them actually that why is there kind of just a top-down kind of flow for anything? We're all peers in a flat structure. And then over time, they realize that, okay, I see why you might really think that way. I think it's okay to do that, or, oh, I see actually why you don't want to do it. Let's do this at a minimum, and then we'll see if we really need to do the full part actually. And then these conversations naturally happen. So that is kind of what I see. The whole self-interest thing is kind of a factor that causes such a form of kind of not so pleasant experiences actually.
Thank you. Thank you. A couple things came to my mind as you were speaking. First of all, I think mediation, as you mentioned, like a three-way call, should only happen if someone requests it.
Yeah.
But I was also thinking, as you were talking, that our topic today, trust, is really like a higher level, additional kind of layer to everything that we do all the time. And it almost made me think, this conversation is really going to be for senior engineers who are already, trusting that other people will get everything done and not distrusting other people's technical skills. But then I thought, trust is so important, as you put it, when there is self-interest. I imagine young engineers who, for example, don't trust their seniors enough, or they don't trust themselves enough. So I think trust is really a topic that can be discussed and dissected in every level of the organization. And so when you are in middle management and you get the pleasure of working with the senior engineers, you can help them build the trust that we more so understand in the layman's words of everyday life. But then when you work with less senior engineers or newcomers, they have to first build the trust within themselves to know, like, is this that I found on Stack Overflow really good? Should I be the one to judge it? And senior engineers can help these junior engineers build trust within themselves first, and then they can turn that kind of outward and find their peers to be trustworthy in the technical sense.
Yeah, 100%. And it's great that you said that for senior engineers, they might always be skeptical that this feels complex or just this is just something in the area that I'm familiar with. I'm not sure if a junior engineer can do justice to the level of solution or the timeline that I could do it. And they keep on doing that work actually. So we never kind of spread the knowledge, or just we don't kind of upskill everyone on the team. That is a factor. For the junior engineers, they are still learning the technical aspects and the corporate kind of culture. So they are just kind of less trusting of themselves to begin with. So you are not confident whether you can take that on. If you luckily have a senior engineer or a mentor or a buddy who's giving you direction, don't expect in the industry that everyone, because you were hired, right? People expect that you are able to showcase your skills, or at least do some level of hustle to figure things out after an extent. So don't expect a run book or like just instruction manual that go to this file, make that change, then just make sure that you are not having a circular reference, or you make sure you're running your test, make sure there is no kind of edge cases for if else or null pointers, all those things. You'll expect that direction that it's probably this area of code that needs updates, or it might be worthwhile checking that. So the senior engineers at times intentionally give half-baked information to junior engineers to see if they can take upon themselves and just kind of trust and figure it out actually, and they take this as a challenge. It's very difficult for as a junior engineer when you are still a little bit kind of insecure about your role, as well as having some level of imposter syndrome actually, that out of college I got this job and I think I certainly need to prove everything. How do I make it happen? At that time you get half-baked information. So you feel that your peers or your senior engineers are not helping. They're intentionally setting you up to fail actually in some sense. But it's the opposite, that you realize that they're actually giving you a huge opportunity to go through failures, experience those early on, that these experiences will be valuable as you progress in your career actually, in that regard. So that level of kind of, I think it's great. I'm talking a lot about the peer relationships at the senior level, but we talk about more about the leveling aspects in a more vertical fashion. Trust has a whole new meaning altogether, actually.
I love that. Thank you so much. Okay, I am trying to be mindful of the time here. So let me switch gears a little bit and move into feedback. It's always a great topic. Sometimes it's challenging. Giving constructive feedback, giving perhaps negative feedback. You have already mentioned that even with praise, you should be mindful of how you deliver it. What channels would you recommend our listeners use for feedback in a remote environment? What do you use? And also, what other aspects of feedback and trust would you want to highlight for us?
Yeah, I would say the first thing that comes to my mind, and this is all that I have had varying degrees of success or failures that are collective experiences, is with feedback, just give, but also receive feedback, right? I first need to be okay that I might receive not so great feedback, right? I'm an employee or just also someone's direct report at the end of the day. So if I feel that, oh, if I go seek feedback from my direct reports and everyone scores me a 5 out of 10, well, what's going to happen to me? But it might be that once I hear that 5 out of 10 are the reasons that will help me give them better feedback, their 5 out of 10 might be because we're not getting direction or consistent feedback from Anand. So I first need to receive feedback to, over time, perfect the art of giving feedback, actually. So it goes both ways. At the kind of, I would say, interpersonal or career growth aspects, actually, I definitely use my alternate one-on-one. So at least I do bi-weekly one-on-one. So at least once a month, we are talking about two things. First is whether somebody is liking the work or opportunity that they have. And the second is what they want to do, say, 6 months or 3 months or a year from now. Because I think my number one job as a people manager while leading a team is to align opportunity with interests. I am aware, at least a little bit more than my team, what are some opportunities on the horizon for our organization, our division, or the teams that we are forecasting or planning into our roadmaps of the future. And I know at an individual level or at a collective level, what are some things that the team or the individual is interested in. If I can kind of form that matchmaking, that is a win-win in my mind, that people are motivated, they get to work on challenging and fun items. More so engineers like to prefer that rather than the same kind of work, actually. So that versus kind of the opportunities that might be a new proof of concept, a new kind of discovery that we need to do or to test out a new idea, or is delivering for a key solution which might need kind of more collaboration. It's a complex kind of project across teams. So that is important, where I am kind of just getting feedback from them in terms of am I doing the right thing, actually? And then each month I try to give them feedback in terms of this is what we committed to verbally, or just kind of as a trust between each other, that this is what you will kind of contribute towards, this is how it's going, anything that you could do more of or less of, actually. And it's always as much possible backed with examples, right? One thing I am blessed with, or I get praised often, is having that photogenic memory, where I can hunt down a 6-month old Slack message, or I can in my mind recall what I talked with someone 15 months ago, and they are like, oh yes, you are right, that just helps people, or at times puts them on the spot, that, oh, you are right, I did say that I'll do that. Sorry, I said like this will happen 6 months ago, I've still not gotten to that. Or you're right, thank you for reminding me of that. I didn't even realize that I did all of that during the past year. Because the more you, and this ties into the next point, which is kind of feedback around performance reviews to an extent, actually. We do 6-month performance reviews at my current place, and I think that works well over the yearly ones, actually, because the more you stretch out, the more kind of people think over the last 3 to 4 months what they did, actually, and then it dismisses what they did 6 months, 9 months ago, unless somebody is keeping a track record or a document of all things they did. And at times it's really important to realize kind of things that truly stand out, or kind of the things that were above and beyond, right? You don't want your yearly performance review to simply read meets expectations. Everything that is assigned to, they do it well, and it's great. You want to find those kind of light bulb moments or just kind of just rare diamonds in the rough kind of moments where you really kind of stood for the team, or just you took upon something where no one was willing to, or you went above and beyond, or you helped like a production kind of support incident as well. Another thing that I'm trying to actively advocate for in the giving feedback thing is more often we praise firefighting, that you are helping solve a P0 situation or a war room incident. I'm now shifting my conversations and mindset to how can I celebrate people who build fireproof architectures to begin with? Why even get to the firefighting stage? And we always say that, wow, this person is great. He is doing production support. He's working overtime. But why even get someone to that stage and praise them? How can we praise people who are trying to prevent that, or kind of put in resilience for that part? So that is what I give feedback on, that this item that you delivered, was there something that we could do to avoid this hypothetical scenario in the future? There is a balance, right? I don't want them to or engineer every little pull request, which is like 5 lines, and say, can you make it 50 lines and safeguard for this unicorn situation that might or might not happen? But at least thinking this in a more proactive cadence helps us us as a team in that regard. So I would say that is good. And the last part I'll say around technical feedback, I do that with an engineering roundtable with my team every week, and we do that with retrospectives where people are much more open now to peer feedback. A lot of the technical feedback cannot come directly from me because over time I'm not closer to the technical decision making or the work that is being implemented, right? I'm much more a part of the inception, and then why we do it and what are we doing, the how we are doing it, the nitty gritty. Over time, I'm kind of spending less time with, and I trust my teams to do that. So that feedback has to come from the peer circle, that is the other engineers or kind of the people who are living through the consequences of that, like our customers or internal CS team based on the inbound. So that is another layer of feedback that I'm trying to implement. It's not that every piece of feedback can or should come through me, because I'm not kind of equipped with all the information that can help an individual, both from a career standpoint, interest level, plus the technical output level.
Right, right. Thank you very much. And thank you for highlighting that you are paying attention to your direct reports' work, because I think all of what you have just said boils down to, do the people trust that you are paying attention as a leader? And I think that is like one of the most important things that a leader can be accountable for. Thank you. We have covered a really great area of trust and how it is built in remote teams and how it is built in engineering teams. We talked about giving feedback, and we talked about being mindful with your communications and being constructive, and even, keeping people in the loop about the progress that one is making about an issue. And I think there is a lot more to say about this topic. But do you have anything else to add that you think is very important in this regard?
No, I think all I said is just my little baby steps in this journey, actually. And I think there's a lot for me to learn and grow in these uncertain times with the industry. So I'm excited on once this is out, and I'm would love to connect with folks in the industry and hear their opinions or just their experiences, because there's only a finite set of things I can experience in a given role or leading a given team. So the more diverse and kind of individual perspectives we hear from across the globe, that will help us collectively be better at this, actually.
Sure, I completely agree with you. More eyes see more things. So with that said, where can our listeners follow your work? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I would say I would recommend just my LinkedIn profile. That's where I post all the work that comes out. I also have a Linktree profile, which is kind of a single page. I'll send the link after to include, but I think my LinkedIn profile, just my name, Anand Safi, and you'll find me there. I do make a point to read each and every kind of message request to see if there's something I can do, or if I can kind of direct them to some place or someone who can help unblock. that's just my little time that I've carved out each week to make sure that I am able to connect with the community. And I've gotten a lot of support from the peer community during my kind of career progression or just my industry networking thing. So the least I can do is just be reciprocal and return the favor, actually.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you. In the name of our listeners and people who might look for any kind of guidance. With that said, this concludes our conversation for today. I am so thankful you could join us. Dearest listeners and watchers, today my guest was Anand Safi. He is a Senior Engineering Manager at Mark 43, and we talked about trust, building it, and having it built in a remote team. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Carolina. It was great. Bye.
Dearest listeners and watchers, please join our engineering leadership community. It's called Level Up Engineering Newsletter. It's on codingsense.com. And we share interesting articles like the ones that Anand writes. So please join us. I am Carolina Toth. I am glad to see you here, and I hope to see you next time.
Thanks for staying with Level Up Engineering. If you enjoyed this podcast, so will your friends. Share this episode on your favorite social networking platform. To stay up to date with our content, follow Level Up Engineering on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Google Podcast. Brought to you by Coding Sans, a software development agency building web applications with Angular and Node.js. Check them out at codingsans.com.